When Thomas left to run his branch line, there was no one else to shunt the coaches for the big engines. So in response to this, the Fat Controller had ordered a new engine to fill the role as station pilot. Dominic, or Dom as he liked to be called, was a tank engine from the Hunslet Engine Works in Leeds. He had previously worked at a marshalling yard in the Midlands, so took to station pilot like a duck to water, and immediately made himself at home. However, there was one thing Dom was having trouble with, mainly from a physical appearance. "Thank you for arranging my coaches to—" "Oh, sorry, Dom. I thought you were—" "That's alright, Henry," puffed Dom. "I know who you thought I was. You're not the first to do that, so don't worry about it." Ever since he arrived, Dom had been mistaken for Thomas due to him having an almost similar shape, 6 small wheels, and blue paint. "You've been calling him Thomas ever since he got here," James huffed. "If you ask me, we have enough blue engines on this railway and need more of a variety. At least you and I, Henry, stand out a lot more, and everyone can tell us apart." "Well, I think I look smart in this colour," Dom replied modestly. "Also," Henry added, while grinning, "didn't the Fat Controller recently say he would have you painted blue?" James glared crossly. "Well, even if Dom was painted in a different colour like green or red, both him and Thomas would still look very similar." "Rubbish!" Dom snapped and let off steam angrily. "Thomas and I may look similar, but it doesn't mean we're completely identical." "Huh!" snorted James, and puffed away when the guard blew his whistle. "Take no notice of him," said Henry. "If you like your paint blue, then you do. And in time, people will notice the difference and know who is who." That did make Dom feel a bit better, but he really wished everyone would notice the obvious differences between him and Thomas sooner, rather than later. The next morning, Dom was arranging the coaches for the first trains of the day, these being for Gordon's Express and Thomas's branch line service. After Gordon had gone, Dom decided to take a short break in the sidings to give Thomas enough time to leave with his train, and then he could fetch Henry's coaches afterwards. Dom had just come to a stop when the station master came up. "Come on, Thomas, your train is due out." "But I'm not Thomas," Dom interjected. "I'm—" "Trying to trick me?" interrupted the station master. "Well, you're not fooling me. Now come on, we can't keep the passengers waiting." Dom groaned frustratingly, but not wanting to get into an argument, he decided it would be best to do what he was told. He crossed over the point and backed down onto Annie and Clarabelle as the passengers got on board. The 2 coaches were surprised to see the engine who had just shunted them being coupled back up. "What are you doing here?" asked Annie. "You're not our engine," Clarabelle added. Before Dom could explain what was going on, the guard blew his whistle and they had to go. Now Dom had never pulled a passenger train before, as he had only worked as a shunter. So as he hurried along the line, Dom began to bump and bounce about. "You're going too fast, slow down! You're going too fast, slow down!" cried the coaches. "But passenger trains are meant to be on time, aren't they?" called Dom, still trying to get his smokebox round on how to pull passengers. But with the constant cries of panic from the coaches and passengers shouting, poor Dom was getting confused and mixed messages. "Oh, I wish Thomas was pulling you instead of me." "So do we," called Annie and Clarabelle together. Meanwhile, back at the big station, the Fat Controller had just come out of his office and was surprised to see Thomas still in the station. "What are you still doing here, Thomas?" he asked. "Annie and Clarabelle have disappeared," answered Thomas. "I thought Dom had prepared them earlier, and now they're just gone." Just then, the 2 of them heard a whistle, and there pulling into the station, tired and looking like he could scream, was Dom, with a rather flustered Annie and Clarabelle behind him. "Dominic, where have you been?" asked the Fat Controller sternly. "And what are you doing with Thomas's coaches?" "I've been trying to explain that at least 3 times today," Dom answered, still feeling rather exhausted. "Well," said the Fat Controller, "what do you have to say for yourself?" So Dom explained what had happened that morning. "And if you," said Dom, looking towards the station master. "Just took a minute to look me over. None of this would have happened at all." The station master stepped forward and saw Dom's nameplate clear as day on his side, as well as his number. Soon it all made complete sense. It dawned upon everyone that this whole incident had been a case of mistaken identity. "Oh, well, I'm sorry I mistook you for Thomas. But why?" the station master asked, looking towards the other blue tank engine. "Hadn't you arrived earlier that day?" "The turntable had jammed," replied Thomas, "and I couldn't leave the sheds, and once I could, I had to do Dom's work while he was out pulling my train." And after further apologies were given, everything was quickly sorted. Thomas took back his coaches for the afternoon run, and Dom, tired and fed up, puffed away for a long and much-needed rest. That evening, when the day's work was done, Dom was having a drink when Thomas came up. "I'm so sorry about the mix-up, Thomas," Dom sighed sadly. "If I hadn't had a similar colour to yours, none of this would have happened." Thomas smiled warmly at the little engine. "Don't blame yourself for all this," he replied. "We may look similar to one another, but that doesn't bother me at all. You're a hard worker, very friendly, and definitely have the potential to be a really useful engine. To you, maybe, but I bet the Fat Controller's going to send me back to the marshalling yard after this." "Don't think like that," puffed Thomas. "We've all made our fair share of mistakes. I forgot the coaches when I got to pull my own train, and got pushed down the hill by the trucks. Mind you," he went on, "we're not the only ones who had a colour mishap like this." "Really?" "Oh yes, people kept on confusing Henry for Gordon on some occasions. And I personally think you do look smart painted blue. It's the only proper colour for an engine." And for the first time all day, Dom smiled. Hearing those words from Thomas made him feel much better. And soon enough, the two were chatting like old friends. Dom still works at the big station in his role as station pilot, but was allowed to pull small goods trains to the junction on some occasions, and both Edward and Thomas would give him advice on pulling trains. Mistaking Dom for Thomas has also subsided, and now everyone could see the differences between the two. Even James sees Dom as not just another little blue tank engine, but a hard-working and useful one at that. Although, the Hunslet isn't too far from cracking a few jokes. "Here are your trucks, James," Dom said one day. "Have you got some bootlaces ready?" And he ran off, laughing.